Usually when expectations are low, pressure is also low. But in the case of the Houston Texans, it might be the complete opposite. Less pressure, more expectations. Let's go inside the locker room and make sense of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do.
So the draft is over, and now it's on to other storylines for the Houston Texans. How is the roster going to shape up? How are they going to be coached? What are the coaches going to look like? What does this team look like at training camp? And what will they do once they actually get on the field? And we've gone from the wild Vegas betting odds when it comes to rookies to now projections of win-loss totals. And the difference between win-loss total betting and who's going to be picked where betting is that these are pretty much projections. And it's hard to project the NFL. It's a year-to-year league. You see teams go from worst to first. You see teams go from first to worst. It happens often. But these are actual Vegas projections. This is not like someone goes on Reddit and all of a sudden you can say, well, the Texans they're just trying to bait you into betting. That's where Las Vegas is at right now. And Las Vegas has the Texans right now tied for the fewest amount of wins on the win total at 5.5. Now, a couple of things when it comes to these projections. First of all, usually when expectations are that low, the pressure is lower too, because you're not expecting, obviously, on paper, this means that when the division's factored in and everything else, you're not expected to win a lot of games. But in this situation, with the Texans not having their draft pick next year, finishing with the second worst record in the NFL could be a borderline disaster in a number of ways. And I'll just go through all of the ways in which this could be somewhat of a disaster, starting with the pressure that you would be putting on your quarterback. Because naturally, whenever you get picked high as a quarterback, you're going to have pressure. But in CJ Stroud's case, he's already connected to Anthony Richardson because Anthony Richardson's going to be in the division, and Anthony Richardson was selected 2 picks later. He's also connected to Will Levis because Will Levis was selected with what would have been the Texans' second-round selection. And he's also connected to Bryce Young because Bryce Young was a guy that a lot of people felt that the Texans could have got. So he's already connected to those guys. If you go to next season and the Texans have the number 2 pick in the draft, which is what the projection is, and if you think it's a bad projection, I would go ahead and bet. I would take the over on the 5.5. But I do think they've got to avoid this situation because if this happens next year and you decided not to wait for a quarterback and you still would have had a top 2, top 3 pick, then the decision to not wait for a quarterback is going to kind of look bad, and rightfully so. And with that pick, depending on what Arizona does, there's a chance that you have someone like Drake May go number 2. So you're connecting CJ Stroud to yet another quarterback. And that's why if these Las Vegas odds, and they're never correct. You saw the Giants last year, they went from 4 to 10. If they went from 4 wins to 10 with Brian Dable. But if you do have that few wins, your bold decision not to wait looks bad. Your quarterback is now connected to a bunch of other quarterbacks. I think a lot of people would say Drake May is probably a better prospect than CJ, and it won't look good. Now, that's not to say it's going to happen, but I do think that when you look at this low win total that Las Vegas expects the Texans to get, and again, I would bet the over, but if that does happen, it's kind of a disaster. And in a strange way, it actually increases pressure. Now, there is some good though about not having the own draft pick. And this is the one thing that I do think is good about the Texans not having their own draft pick is I'm assuming that last year, and no coach wants to be in this situation. Nobody wants to be in a situation where you benefit from losing. I mean, I think a lot of us felt dirty having to root for the Indianapolis Colts for the greater cause. And it felt dirty really just rooting against the Texans at the end of last season. But in this instance, you're not going to have to do that. So you're going to have to win as many games as you can. And you have the Browns first round pick next year. So you're basically rooting against Deshaun Watson, your former franchise quarterback, and you're rooting for your team. So that is the good thing. DeMeco Ryans will never feel any pressure to lose a game. And I think if DeMeco Ryans had been in the same situation that Lovey were in last year, I think we see the Texans lose the game. But because Lovey was going to be gone, that just kind of made the situation worse. So you're in a good spot there when it comes to not having the pick. The bad thing is obviously if you are one of the worst teams in the league, then your plan to not wait for a quarterback looks worse. And it just kind of you begin to go back. People begin to go back and revisit the trade, more pressures on CJ Stroud, etc. But there is more pressure on the Texans because of this, because you don't have your own pick. Because if it's near the top, that just brings in a lot more scrutiny, a lot more pressure for the team, and that's where we're at right now. So more pressure due to lower expectations. But again, I would go to Vegas. I would take the over 5.5. I don't think they're going to be a 5.5 squad, but they've got to go out there and do their thing and kind of prove the people in Vegas wrong. So more pressure to win for the Houston Texans with the less expectations. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Tomorrow, going to get back on the roll. Going to have the full lives coming up. Going to have a CJ Stroud connection video in the morning. We're going to keep this going. The draft is finally done. I'm seeing a lot of the predictions and stuff. The vibes are better. Expectations low, but the pressure to win even higher in a crazy, crazy way. Appreciate everyone for coming through to the locker room. No matter what happens, though, whether they're over 5.5, less than 5.5, whether CJ Stroud's connected to Drake May, whether DeMeco goes from 3 wins to 9 to 4 to 10, same thing that Brian Dable did. We're all in this together. Appreciate everyone for coming through.
Every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localized every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways.